Feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Hey everyone, I'm Mark Scribner. I'm your host of the Shrimp Tank here in Boston today. The Shrimp Tank is nationally syndicated through iHeart, Google, Stitch, SoundCloud, YouTube, basically anywhere that you can get your podcasts, you can find us. We are the number one entrepreneurial podcast on the internet at the moment, and we have 13 cities. We're now syndicated as well in Canada. So you can basically find us anywhere that you can get your podcasts. We would like to get your subscribership. So just smash that like button and the subscription button. You'll get alerted of this show and all the other cities. Today, we have what I would call a resident badass. He's a friend of mine. His name is Eric Wynn. And this dude's hung out of helicopters with a lens, some of the most epic shots in the ultra endurance world that you've seen some images of the World Championship, for example, and it's the holy grail of Ironman. But has had a storied career in ultra endurance, is also the owner of a company called Slow Twitch Media, and then has built a really amazing business around doing product photography and some really big contracts. You think about all the endurance sports and all the really cool companies out there, those popping images that you see everywhere. Most likely Eric was responsible for putting some of that out there. So we're going to go on the Wayback Machine. And first off, buddy, it's great to see your face, and I'm glad that you're doing so well.
You too. Thanks for allowing me to be on the show. I definitely don't feel worthy enough to be here, but I jumped at the opportunity to do it, and yeah, happy to be hanging out with you for the next 35 45 minutes. So
great. Hey, so listen, Eric, let's get into it. So let's tell our viewers how do you earn your living? Like, what are some of the things that you do?
I own a small digital ad agency that specializes in visual content creation. I started doing photography work about 12 years ago, just out of pure passion for the sport of triathlon. I was introduced to triathlon when I was in college, my freshman year, and I was walking through the hallway of UVSC at the time, Utah Valley State College, and it was Club Week in the Hall of Flags, and I came across the triathlon club, and I'd heard about triathlons, and I just kind of talked to the club manager at the time, Aaron AC. And I just thought it would be fun to be a part of something. I had moved from Utah, from South Carolina, so I didn't have a whole lot of friends, and school was just about to start, and so I figured, why not join a club that was a healthy lifestyle, which is a big part of my life, and has been since I lost 120 pounds when I was in high school. Wow. And so I got into the sport, and in Utah we have this thing called the inversions that happen every winter, and so I would escape the winters on the weekends when I could, and I would travel down to Arizona, and I bought a little Canon Rebel from Costco, and went down to Ironman, Arizona, and I was just taking pictures of my idols at the time. And that's kind of how I started with my passion with photography. And that later led me to learning the ins and outs of how to get media credentials. And, I'd go to other races, and then I'd meet pros, and, I was oogling and ogling over them, and later learned that they were just normal human beings with, superpower athletic abilities. But that's how I got into what I do now. And it's been an amazing, fun journey. I took about 4 years off from it after I got burnt out the first time. And when I came back 3.5 years ago, it was 3 months before I got married for the first time. And I was working a full-time job as a chief operating officer of an event company, and I was working way too much and wasn't happy. And I looked at my future wife and said, "Can I quit my job and go back to photography?" And she fully supported it. And so I came up with this this concept of a small digital ad agency that specialized in the endurance world, and I wanted the focus to be on being able to go out and help brands enter our space, and be able to be successful in entering those into our space successfully, and to be able to have a good return on investment. I one of the big focuses that I had was I was going to take my time and really focus on the things that I didn't focus on the first time I got into the business. And so I've had a really good time doing that over the last 3 years.
Eric,
so,
at
yeah.
what point did you kind of figure out that this could be sustaining from a financial perspective? I mean, at some point, you're trying to look at the economics, but where did this, kind of resonate where you're like, I can support my family, or, make ends meet at a certain point?
Honestly, I've been I learned that the first year that I was doing photography. I didn't make money the first year, but the second year I made money. And the third year I made good money. And the fourth year I made a lot of money. But then I got burnt out because I didn't have the business mindset that I needed. I was working too much in my business instead of on my business.
Mhm.
And that's when I actually took a step back to go get a normal 9-to-5 job. And I did that for about four years. But I actually learned really quick that I don't personally feel like it's hard to make money doing photography. I know that there's a lot of people out there that struggle with that concept, but me personally, it's always been not easy, but it's been something that I haven't struggled with a lot when it comes to making money at the actual art of photography.
Why is that though? Like, what separates you? Is it because you're confident in knowing what your worth is and getting paid for your time? Like, how do you think you are different in that regard? Because a lot of people that are creatives, they don't operate really well in the business world. They're good at their craft, but when it comes to business, they're not so good.
I think it's because of my background in my life with the types of jobs that I've held.
Okay.
And the way that I approached school when I was in college. I studied business management for a couple semesters. I put myself through college. I've worked since I was 16 years old. I've done everything from bussing tables to being a prep chef to, fine dine waiting to, multi-level marketing things for a while to, selling cable door to door. So I spent the first, I would say, 5 years of my adulthood, really trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And so that caused me to be in a lot of different jobs. And I was able to learn a lot during that time. And so where I feel like most creatives have a hard time is understanding that your product actually has to do something other than just look pretty. That doesn't sell. That doesn't pay the bills.
You mean
It may
verticals?
later.
Do you mean
Pardon?
verticals, like having a product and like where does it go, or is it a one and done kind of a mentality?
Yeah, it's like, you get the photographer that goes out and they take this picture of a person running, and it's like, okay, great, that's awesome, but what is that? Is there a product there that's going to actually sell? Is the running form proper? Is that photo marketable to someone, or is it just a pretty picture that you happen to like? And I think that's the problem with a lot of creatives is they want to just be creative, but they don't want to be creative with a purpose for actually selling something or making something desirable by people that look at it.
That's compelling. I just stop right there. Creating something with a purpose is a lost art for a lot of people, but I think that's really critical, is to have a purpose. I mean, and everybody has cell phones now, and to try to separate yourself from the average Joe. And quite candidly, cell phones are getting to the level where they're almost as good as some of the higher end cameras. And so I think a lot of people are trying to figure out, what the next iteration is. How do you feel about in your space, something like an NFT, for example, which is one of the kind of the pushbacks for a lot of creatives is they can't really control rights management in a lot of ways. But, people think that the solution right now could be something like an NFT where, the creative is creating content, but they have multiple ways to create an income stream as it passes on from hand to hand.
Um, I I'm not super familiar with NFTs. I've spent a little bit of time looking into them. I feel like if I was going to do anything, that time is past. It seems like the people that really banked on NFTs were in it 3 or 4 years ago when it really started to, I feel the same way with like crypto. It's like, yeah, crypto's, it could be, but I wish I would have invested in Bitcoin, long time ago. Um, I, if you are a creative in the regards, if you can actually design the NFT, if you're a graphic artist, if you're really good at Adobe Illustrator, and if you're able to actually do that, I think, or if you have a person that that can create that, I think that's something that would be beneficial for you to look at. But I think the biggest thing that we as creatives have to decide and internalize for ourselves is what is our strengths as individuals and what are we super passionate about? Because that is where you should spend all of your time and energy pursuing, are the things that you're passionate about, that you live and breathe. And because that's where your creative juices are going to come for, and that's where you're going to find your purpose with what you're going after. A lot of photographers are like chickens without a head, and they're just taking pictures of everything, but they never specialize in anything really good. And I think when you're looking at the people that have been very successful in their career in this space, they've become specialists at certain things and they become better at it than anyone else. And that's when you get the attention of the bigger companies to really go make a living at it, is when you become a specialist at something that they need help with.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think about like your business in whole? I know you have a treasure trove of, whatever, couple terabytes or whatever material, but, in the past, like stock photos, it's a small industry in a lot of ways for most creatives, but how do you monetize, this tremendous database of images that you've created over your career, or do you even think about that?
I've actually started to think about that recently because it's funny that you said a couple of terabytes. I realized one day about 2 months ago that I had about 9 hard drives that were anywhere from 4 to 12 terabytes. And all of a sudden I woke up one day and they were all full. And I was like, oh man, I gotta figure this out. Especially with the advancements of technology and where video is going, where you used to be able to buy a 4 terabyte hard drive and you could edit from it. You could, use it for years before it would be full. Now I'm shooting 1 to 2 terabytes per shoot. And we're doing, 3 or 4 shoots a month. And so I'm starting finally to get time to really figure out what I want to do from the monetization of those things. Stock photography is definitely something that I'm very interested in. The name Slow Twitch Media House, which is the company that I own and operate, is in partnership with slowtwitch.com. And one of the things that we're responsible for is providing content to Slow Twitch. Slowtwitch.com is probably the second largest platform in the endurance arena. I would consider it the most influential platform.
Who's first?
And, as far as size, you're probably going to look at triathlete.com just from a metric standpoint. But as far as influential, I think that we're number one. We have something that no one else in the space does. We have an online forum with millions and millions of threads and data points that we can pull from over 25 years of history. And so when it comes to information and what's going on in the sport, we have 100,000 active users on that forum. that inform us of what people are really interested in. And so when we start to think about things that I have a treasure trove of access to, it's that. And so recently I just hired a full-time photo editor to start going through all of that stuff, to start to create a huge database that we can start pulling from, so that we can dive into our rich history to be able to utilize that. There was a point in time where I was talking to a book company to do a book, but that I just wasn't quite ready for that yet. So I'm sure there will be a time where I will be able to utilize some of the iconic pictures that I've been lucky enough to be at the right place, the right time with the right person, that I could probably put together and sell. But I still think I'm a couple of years off from that. I've got some more iconic stuff that I need to do first before I can say I've got a book worthy, something to sell.
Now, you're, for the most part, I mean, I know you had people that work with you on projects, but for the most part, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're more or less a sole practitioner in a lot of regard, right?
I am. Yep. I've got a really good team of some subcontractors that work with me. I currently don't have any employees. I don't know if I want any of them. I've done that. But I've got a lot of full-time contractors and part-time contractors that are very specialists in their field. And we have taken the time to figure out that our visions are in line and our work ethics are in line, before we made those agreements to specialize in certain things to create a full service digital ad agency so that our clients are taken care of the way that they're supposed to be taken care of. But we're really small, and but we, and that's kind of the way we want to keep it for a while.
Yeah. And what percentage of your time do you think you mentioned this, work on your business instead of in it, taking a step back versus the project and trying to have like a 1, 3, 5 year plan of like where you want this to go?
I would say right now about 40% of my time is working on the business. 2 months ago, it was 30%. 2 months before that, it was 20%. Every month, I try to get about 10% more until it's about 50% is working on the business. I don't know if I ever want to get to the point where it's 80% working on the business. I like working next to the people that I work with. I love being in the trenches with them, and I love being down on the ground to figure out what is really needed. I feel like one of the things that has helped me be successful with the clients that we have and the relationships that we have is we take our job very serious in the regards of our job is to make their job easier. And so, when it comes to corporate, structures, most people that are brand managers, marketing managers, they're all overworked. They have way too many things on their plate. And so we become that source for them that we can just handle the things that they need, and they can give us the least amount of time that they have and be the most productive when they know that we're responsible for a project.
So yeah, that's really nice that you think that way. Try to make it easier for your customer to do business with you, and and we do the same thing with a lot of things that we do, especially in the media. Like when we're on TV, like the producer doesn't have to think because we're writing the story, we're doing the FS boards. We just want to make it super easy. So when we're invited into the dance, they know that they're not going to have to worry about that. Do you ever give any thought to, like most business owners, small business owners primarily, think about at some point being able to sell a business or get out of it and, more or less unlock the hidden value there? Is your endeavor something that you think about? Like, if I got to XYZ revenue, that I could sell it to someone else?
I do. And that definitely is a plan of mine. And that's something that I've always thought about. And that's when, one of the reasons when I came back to this arena, that I was very clear with my wife when we made this decision as a family, that I was going to, essentially, in her minds, take this risk to go off, was building it right and taking my time in building it so that all of the pieces to the puzzle were put in place properly. And I think it takes a lot of time to do that. There's two ways to do it. You either can take on a bunch of money and blow a bunch of money and build it really quick, and have a bunch of people's input in it, or you can do it yourself and you take your time and you do it organically. And that's the direction that I wanted to do it. I wanted to have fun. I wanted work-life balance. And I wanted to be able to only work with clients that I enjoyed working with, because I've worked with clients that I didn't enjoy working with, and they probably didn't enjoy working with me, and that's no fun.
Right.
If you've got the ability to make the decision in your life to be passionate about something and to do that for your job, you're very lucky. And so stick with that, and that comes with clients too. You've got to be able to enjoy working with them, because if you do, really cool stuff can happen with their business, and you get to be a part of that to see their business grow. But I would say that I probably have a 10-year plan in total to build this. And I'm about 3 years into it now. So I've got 2 more years in this space, this small space of endurance sports. We're very well known for what we do in this space. And I would say that I'm one of the larger, well-known photographers in the space, but we're also really small when it comes to the rest of the world. Nobody important in the world knows who I am when it comes to taking pictures.
Yeah, the endurance athletes definitely do. I see your socials and iconic pictures of all the major players in the past 10 years, and I'm sure you've developed friendships and partnerships in them through their brands and their extensions. But was it by a conscious decision though? If you think about triathlon, for example, the demographics, the amount of money that people will spend in the sport is astonishing for most people.
Yes.
But was that kind of where I like to say sometimes if you can pitch your tent near the money river, good things happen. And then the sport that you focused on in the beginning was obviously, you see CEOs, CFOs with $20,000 bikes, and they can afford to be there.
Yeah.
But was that a conscious decision? I'm like, this is a sport where people are spending money.
It was a conscious decision on establishing myself in a safe environment where I knew I could make money and I knew I could make it work. And I knew that by doing that, I could continue to grow my relationships with those types of individuals in the world. And I knew that those relationships would come naturally. And when they came naturally, that if I did the things that I knew that I could do and I needed to do, that I would be ready for when those relationships were there to foster a business relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always been a part of the plan, was to come into a space where I knew I was comfortable in, knew I could make money in, knew I could do a good job. And then also that would enable me the free time to really focus on how I could run my business and how I could scale my business and how I could really perfect the customer experience with clients, so that when I was ready and I felt like we were there, we could go after those larger accounts outside of this space. And those would be well received. And we would also have a lot of fun with them because, as you're an Iron Man. Like, you would much rather work with somebody who, has been in this space that you like versus somebody that doesn't know what an Iron Man is. And I think
totally.
that's,
I think that's all. Yeah. I mean, I tell, my real job is, but I always tell my junior advisors, like, try to develop your business around your passions and the people that you want to be around. Because it's, if you're like, for example, don't like being around engineers and then that's all you're around, it's not going to feel like a great career because it feels like work. So it seems like you're able to combine your passion with your skill set, and it's a perfect marriage, if you will, with some of those attributes that you clearly like the sport because you're exposed to it early, but now creating a business around that is really a great mix. I wanted to ask you, like, where in your career did you kind of feel like partnerships? Like, I know you have that partnership with Slow Twitch, but where did you think about, like, all right, I've got some scale here, but if I had this strategic partner, this would move me, to the next phase. And then maybe let's talk about some partnerships without naming names of some people you think would be people you're looking for, types of things that you think would be helpful to take you to that other level that you're trying to get to.
I think that when I started to hit my 30s, I'm 42 now, and when I started to hit my 30s, I really started to understand the value of partnerships and what those brought into my life. It was the first time that I really started to look back and analyze the people who had influenced me over the years that I didn't appreciate at the time, and I started to finally understand what they had done for me. And I started to be introduced to people that were very, very influential people outside of the sport of triathlon. There's a good friend of mine today, Rob Oslin, who was the COO of Wynn and Encore Hotels. He was somebody that I met through his wife.
You were related to him with your last name. No?
You sometimes when I would go stay,
I tell all my friends that know you, I'm like, he owns the Encore and the Wynn and
names right on. Yeah.
Not true?
No, unfortunately not. But he was, he was somebody that introduced me to what is considered now my biggest core group of friends and people that I have not only developed. I mean, he introduced to my best friend, Polly Friedman, who married my wife and I. Wow. And so, that's when my early 30s is when I really started to understand and appreciate partnerships with human beings, because at the end of the day, that's really who you're partnering with. Is you're partnering with a human being. And whether or not and if you end up with a bad partnership business, it's because you started with a bad human being. Either that or you were a bad human being and they're just, not putting up with you. But that's when I really started to appreciate that. And I think if I was going to have to think about, partners now, it would be, individuals who, want to help smaller companies take it to the next level. And people with the financial means to do that. Because if there's anything that I'm really passionate about, is I'm very, very passionate about helping brands grow with a really good, the best possible return on investment that they can grow. And that's one of the reasons why I started this as a digital ad agency, because I saw businesses come into our sport, and the only place that they could go and get a lot of their digital creation done were these big marketing ad agencies. And they would spend all of their money and they would take all of their sponsorship dollars. And a year or two later, they were out of our sport and they had a bad taste in their mouth because they didn't see the return on investment. There was not a long-term strategy there. And so when we look at companies that we take on, they're usually in that $2 to $10 million a year revenue. And they're just at that point where they're ready to just really put the gas down. And they can no longer do it internally. They need some expert advice outside of what they have currently inside their office. And so, whether or not it's small private equity groups that know of companies like that, or whether it's companies in general that are they're just kind of dying internally with ideas. They've been doing it for a long time. They've got a great product, but they just don't know what the next step is to do with their business. I think those are the people that we are looking for right now when it comes to helping them out. Yeah.
So the tagline of the show is where book smarts and street smarts collide. And I want to we're really focused on entrepreneurs, and you're definitely an entrepreneur in this regard in every capacity. But what are some of the things that you suck at? Like if you were to have the Wayback Machine, or like if I learned this in the beginning, it would have been different, or not.
Uh, Things that I have focused on a lot over the last 6 or 7 years is being patient with other people, being nice to everyone. I definitely have had to learn that in my life. I have been horrible at saying no. I built my business on yes. And so I've had to learn how to balance that. If there's a reason why I've been successful at what I do, it's because anytime anyone ever said, "Can you do this?" I would say yes, even if I had no idea how to do it at all.
You jump out of a
I was,
parachute without
I,
the parachute. Yeah, I'll
no,
figure
no
it out as we
problem, man.
go.
I will figure out how to fly,
Right,
guaranteed.
right.
And I've crashed and burned plenty of times in doing that. And so I've learned how to say, I'm learning how to say no.
Yeah,
And so, and just, managing people. And I think that that's even the wrong term. It's working with people.
right,
At the end of the day, you're only as good as the people that work with you.
right.
And, you've got to foster an environment where they can thrive. And all of us as human beings have our insecurities and our stress, and we've got to be able to acknowledge those, not only individually but collectively. And we've got to understand that people are going through other things, and we're here to support them.
Yeah, it's so
um
true. I mean, and I'd add probably a little layer to that is when everybody does better. Like if you're on the wrong end of the transaction, and you're going backwards, and you're not happy because you're not able to sustain yourself, but the other person is, there needs to be some form of, it's never like parity, because sometimes, the way some of these deals probably work for you, you make a calculation, but if you're going backwards and you're not going to be happy, then it's not a good formula for success for anyone.
yeah, pay people what they're worth. Don't pay people what you can't afford. It's just treat people the way that you want to be treated,
Mhm.
and work with them that way.
Yeah.
And if you do that and you find the right people, then all of you are able to thrive, and you have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I want to just remind our listeners here, we'd love to get your followership. Just smash that like button, and subscription button would be huge. Going to transition to a fun segment, and you can have some fun with it if you'd like, but it's called Plead the Fifth. So we're going to talk about some fun stuff, and if you want to plead the fifth, you can. But let's talk about some worse photo shoots or some stories without naming names or products or anything like that. But
Okay. Yeah.
that's fun to like, oh my God, like, some funny stories that you can remember from your career being at, in the top of the food chain for your sport.
Okay. So do you want to hear the helicopter story?
I want to hear the helicopter story.
Okay. So this might be a little bit longer than normal, but in just, it's probably what I'm well known for is the helicopter story. And I like to be able to explain it because, a lot of people thought I was like the bad guy with it, but the reality of it is I was just trying to do my job for my clients. And, I believe it was 2012. It was the year that Chris McCormick won Kona. But about 10 months prior to Kona, the company that puts on the Hawaiian Ironman decided that they were going to really limit media, and they were going to internalize all of it. And so they kind of cut every media person out from being able to go out on course like we usually did. Yeah.
Access, yeah.
Yeah. And I understand why they did it, but I also didn't understand, I didn't agree with how they were doing it. And so through that year, I was assured many times that it wasn't going to be an issue for me because of the people that I was representing and shooting. So I was shooting for a lot of their partners and whatnot. And so when it came down to the actual race, 4 days before the race, I realized that I had no access to the course at all. And I was shooting for the swim sponsor at the time. I was shooting for the nutrition sponsor for the time. So, I wasn't able to do my job. And at the time, that's when media was kind of able to outsource their services and get paid to go shoot this race. It's not that way anymore. It's purely journalistic when you go from a press standpoint now. But at the time we were kind of able to do that. And so I had a lot of contracts leading into Kona, and everybody did. And that's how we made our money was that race. That's where 80% of all revenue was produced, was that race. And so when I learned that we didn't have the access that we thought we were going to have, I remembered a Slow Twitch thread on the forum of guys just renting a helicopter. And so I was like, so I was driving out on the Queen K looking for a place to shoot the bike. And I went past the helicopter company. And so why not, so I went in and I long story short, I met the owner. He was all about it. I rented a helicopter and I flew the helicopter of the day of Kona. And then to make matters worse, I took the chief editor of Triathlete at the time with me. I took the brand manager of Specialized with us, and we had the greatest time ever. We shot the best photos of Kona that's ever been taken because it was all gear side. It was low over the lava fields. It was just epic stuff. It was epic. And then we did everything that we as photographers now hate, and that is we gave all of our photos away for free because we just didn't care at that point, because we were making a stand, because we were media. We should have had that access to begin with. We were denied it, and I made that decision based on the fact that I didn't need to shoot triathlon for the rest of my life. I had a skill set that went way beyond just the sport. I knew that I was a photographer and I could take pictures of anything and everything that I wanted to. And so I made that decision that I was going to make a stand, and that's how I did it. And I went and rented a helicopter, and it was awesome. To this day, it was still probably the most epic photo shoot that I've ever done. And so, yeah.
And was there blowback from that?
Oh yeah, I was banned from the Ironman events for 3 years. Everybody internally at the time just hated me. There was all sorts of just like false stories of like who was up there and why he was doing this and all this stuff. And I just cleared up a rumor like it was like 6 months ago of like what was going on during that. One good friend of mine thought I was like flying over the finish line during the finish, and I was like, we landed that like before the run. Like that wasn't even us. Right. Massive blowback on it. But all that stuff's been repaired as I've learned to grow up and not fight against the rules, and take everyone's consideration into decision making that's going on. So
cool. So we're just about out of time, but for our listeners, it's going to be your body information is going to be inside the body of this video. But for people that want to learn more about Slow Twitch Media, Eric Wynn, some of the stuff, is there websites? Is there LinkedIn? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Probably LinkedIn. Yep. And you just search my name, Eric Wynn. That's the best place. We're in the middle of redoing our website. I thought I was going to be really slow during COVID. It turned out that a lot of the big ad agencies, unfortunately, I feel bad for them, but they had to shut their doors down, and I picked up a ton of business during that time, and I'm just now starting to get caught up on actually working on my business instead of in my business.
Mm.
So we're redoing the website, but LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach out to me.
Okay, we'd love to have you back in a little time when you're like pivoting to that next level. But for our listeners watching today, Eric is definitely the top of the food chain, and it's not just this sport. It's all the major brands that you can think about when you're on Instagram and you're trying to click on that picture to buy those new sneakers or whatever it is in terms of a product. We've had conversations offline of the monotony and the detail that's related to even doing a basic food photo shoot of let's just say a pedal or a bike, and just it's excruciating the amount of detail that he puts into capturing that perfect image. So if you want to look at some of his work, I highly recommend that you check that out. With that said, Eric, great to have you on, and love to get an update with you down the road, and it's good to see your face.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mark, for having me. I appreciate it. And yes, let's catch up soon.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.